Up next, we have Craig Anderson. Craig is an air pollution specialist in CARB's air quality analysis section, and he is here to talk to us all about the 5-year network assessment.
Awesome. Thank you, Grace. All right. Well, you're not going to have to keep count for me, unless I fall off this stage. So I get the advantage of talking about something that is new. Grace mentioned that we're going to have some new things that people haven't heard about before, potentially, and one of them is the network assessment. I looked back through many of our previous trainings, and this wasn't something that was covered, and it's because it occurs only on a 5-year basis, so there really isn't a reason to address it too often. So I'm going to go through this, and it's an exercise that all of us are going to have to go through over the next year. Hopefully some of you have experience with it in the past, but most likely there's only a small group of people that probably dealt with the preparation of the previous one. So I'll go through the 5 W's of it. I'll do a little comparison with the network plan, which probably a lot more people are familiar with, and why these two things are distinctly different. We've got some considerations and priorities. Certainly have to think about those as you're preparing any type of plan, or in this case, an assessment. And there are ways to use this assessment as a tool. So a lot of times we produce documents just because we have to. Obviously, you're going to be doing that. But at the same time, why not try and make something more out of it if you can? And I'll try and give some ideas of ways to do that. And then a timeline for this next assessment, which is going to be over the course of the next year. So what is the assessment, and why does it have to be prepared? Of course, we've got a federal CFR. That dictates a lot of what we do. We've got the reference there. This one defines the annual network plan. It also has a small section right at the end, one little paragraph. You almost wouldn't even notice it if you weren't looking for it particularly. Compared to most regulations, it's great. It's just like 3 little sentences. You wouldn't even know, so don't miss it, because it is something you have to do. But the nice thing is it is short. And that means you're going to have a lot of freedom as to what you can do with it. It's got a couple sentences, like I said. It's only asking you to evaluate a couple things, which have to do with whether new sites are needed, whether or not you need to get rid of any sites, or you could get rid of any sites. And then it's asking you to look at new technologies. Obviously, sensors are probably going to be a part of this, and how those might be able to supplement networks in the future. And then it has a few considerations. You have to be able to support air quality characterization for areas with relatively high populations of susceptible individuals. So that's what Eric was talking about, trying to get to the public. And these are the people that really matter, ones with asthma, COPD, other stuff like that. And then you have to look at the effect of discontinuing sites. You can have all the statistics in the world showing that you don't need it. But that doesn't mean you won't have the publics really fighting you, saying, no, we want that site still here. And you don't want to necessarily just pull it out because the stats say to do it. And the regulation tells you you're supposed to take those into consideration. And that's it. You really just have to prepare it and submit it. So how do we do this? The assessment is not a small effort. We've got a huge state, a lot of monitors. These aren't exactly current, so if you notice some sites that aren't exactly right, it's a little dated. But we've got an ozone map of PM 2.5 sites throughout the state just to give you a feel for different agencies, how wide variety of sites that we have and their locations, and the effort. To do a statewide assessment would be very difficult. Most states in the country are able to do it for statewide. There's no way we could attempt to do that for the wide variety of sites and the terrain, the equipment, the population distribution. We've got very distinct air basins. So one way to make this a little bit easier, obviously, like everything else we do here, is to break it up into the PQAOs. We've got large areas with lots of people, and they are able to produce their own network assessment. So you got the Bay Area, South Coast, San Diego doing their own. CARB is responsible for doing the rest. And that's what we did during the first one, which was in 2010, and the last one, which was in 2015, and we'll be doing it again for 2020. We didn't necessarily do all of those areas. For the last one, we've got CARB that did 25 of the districts within our PQAO. Bay Area did their own, of course, and Yolo Solano joined in with them, and that kind of made sense because they do split one of the counties there. South Coast, as I said, and San Diego did their own. And then we had 6 others that chose to do them on their own. I thought about potentially asking them why they wanted to do their own, thinking it would be nice to hear those reasons, but it might be a little more political and probably unsafe. So not sure I want to do that. But they've all done their own, and everybody did their own. I mean, if you look across them, they're really distinctly different, and everybody accomplished the same task, meeting their needs in different ways. And EPA does have a website where those are posted if you wanted to go look them up and see what was done in the past. When is the assessment due? So it is every 5 years. As I said, the first one was in 2010, the last one was in 2015, and the next one's going to be due July 1st of next year. So we've got 1 year. So you've got plenty of time. It's not like it's going to be next month and you're just finding out about this now. And then you need to send that to the regional administrator. And I thought about putting the name there, but I don't know, it changes every few weeks, it seems. So just ask Dina or somebody at EPA who it should go to, and they're really nice about it. They'll tell you who the current person is. So how will it be prepared? I'll start with last year's. So at CARB, we took it and broke it down by air basin. That seemed the most logical way to start with all of these distinct areas that we had to deal with, at least for our assessment. And we started looking at population density. So over here, this is the Sacramento Air Basin. As I mentioned, Sacramento did their own, but we didn't do the assessment irrespective of what they did there. We still needed to include those in our ideas about where monitors might need to be located within the basin and how those are actually helping with the others. And so we have some colored shading in here that does indicate the population density, where the monitors are, and then you can see the terrain lightly in there as well. And so we really did a cursory look. I mean, there are a lot of statistics, and I'll show a few that we're considering for doing in this time. And if you look at the other assessments, you'll see that they have all kinds of stuff too, which are really neat, things that people did. But we just started at a high level, tried to get a general feel for where the sites are, where we think they might need to be based on wind flows. I mean, I'm a meteorologist, so I did the stuff that was easiest for me and what I understood. And it gave us a good foundation, I think, for getting into this next one and trying to do more of the statistics. Some of the focuses were high concentration and evaluating design values. I mean, those guide a lot of what we do. You want to know where the worst pollution is and make sure you're monitoring there. So yeah, we've got a few different things that I pulled out of different assessments. There's a wide range of statistics. GIS is really powerful for this type of effort. You could do simple analyses with graphs, where all of us are really good at doing graphs. So you might look at trends of design values and just see, okay, do you have a place that's going up slowly with time? Maybe that's an area where if you only have one monitor, you might want to add some more. If it's going down, maybe that's a place where it's been clean, it's continuing to be clean, it seems reliable. Maybe let's focus on an area where you're seeing values increasing instead and make a shift there. I pulled one here from the Sacramento area. They use a technique called Thiessen polygons, where all of the area within each box is covered by that one monitoring site. Like every area in there is closest to that one spot. And so once you have that area defined, in this case they looked at population density, and you can see certain areas that are covered well by each site, and others where you've got, say, like Slough House, which is a very broad area, but the population density is lower. So that's probably adequate for that type of area, whereas you have more in the central part of the region. And so you can take that kind of information and apply all kinds of different layers to it and evaluate that. The middle one is an ozone correlation matrix. So this has to deal with the correlation between two sites, looking at how the ozone responds to each other, the distance between them, and it helps to give a quick look at which sites are really highly linked and the level of the values there. And from there, you can go into trying to decide, okay, these two look like they really replicate each other well. Is there a way to maybe centralize a spot between them, or even just remove one and not have an issue? And then I even went to Arizona, and they had this ranking analysis that they did where they took 9 different parameters. Some of them had to looking at design values, how far away from the standard were you, and a bunch of different factors, and gave them all rankings, 0 through 10. Some of them were either 0 or 10. Some of them were a scale in between based on where they fell. relative to the other monitors. And so they gridded the whole state in GIS and came up with these orange areas which showed that those were the areas that were least represented and mattered most in terms of where air pollution was either increasing or was already highest. And it was pretty neat to look through that. And like I said, you can look it up on EPA's website and look through the analysis. And I mean, we might try and do something like that. Like I said, we kind of did a cursory look at it the last time. And to try and do all of these in one is ambitious, but we do have a year. And we'd like to try and do more of these. And I mean, like I said, we cover a lot of areas. We'll be working with districts. And if there's something that you feel really represents your area well, we'll want to communicate about that. So we have the assessment. It's done every 5 years. And then we have the annual network plan. The difference between those seems like, based on the names, that they would be pretty similar. The plan ends up being more like a status report. This assessment ends up being more like a real evaluation, trying to get at the adequacy of your network. As I mentioned, based on the regulation, what it states for what you have to do for the assessment is minimal. One little paragraph, evaluate a few things, consider a few things, but the rest of it's up to you on how you want to go about doing your analysis and what you want to present. And that also is going to vary depending on how many monitors are in the area that you're assessing. Whereas for the annual network plan, it's very discrete and detailed items that you have to include in that. And then EPA goes through with a fine-tooth comb and really finds everything. And it's really helpful because it lets us look at what's missing, whether it's in AQS or even out on our public-facing websites, and get those information updated. Public comment period. This is quite a difference here. You might not sound like a big deal, but for the annual network plan, you are required to send that out to the public, and they are allowed to look at it. But the interesting thing is you're not really planning much in it. You're not telling them or asking them even what they would like. You're pretty much saying, here's what we did, and here's what pretty sure is going to come up in the next year. Whereas with this assessment, you really are taking a look at it and saying, here's our long-term plan of what we think should be happening with our network in the coming years. And that can be 2 to 5 years. I mean, you can even have stuff in there, obviously, that goes out longer if that's pertinent to you. But then, like I said, for the annual network plan, it's really like, what just happened and what do we see is going to happen in the very near future? But yeah, the comment period part, just to focus on that a little bit, it does give you a lot more freedom, I think, with the assessment, because I mean, you have the option to. If you want to be open and taking in the comments from the public, go for it. I mean, it's free. It's not that you can't do it. But it might lead to a lot of AB 617 stuff that doesn't really need to fit in with your regulatory network. So it is nice that you can do this and almost feel like you can do it freely without necessarily getting the criticism from the public. So some considerations. I got a map here. These were our recommendations for the federal ozone standard the last time. That's probably what guides a lot of our network and where we see that we need to go. But you might have a focus on non-attainment or attainment areas as well. Do we still need to keep monitoring there, or can we, like I said, focus on areas that are higher? Monitor density is always a factor. Resources are going to be, I mean, that isn't anything we talk about that doesn't involve resources and limitations. Equipment support requirements, you'll hear a little bit about this with the network design, but you do have to consider co-location stuff, putting in new equipment that nobody else is running. Can we handle it? Can a CARB audit it? Those kind of things. So. And then we've got AQI reporting too. So Eric talked a little bit about that. This is what it looks like on a map on the public-facing websites. This is from the AirNow website that EPA runs. And these are the colors. So this is what the public's seeing. They don't see the concentration numbers most of the time. They see the colors. And then they go to purple air and they see those colors. So we're dealing with that. That's obviously a focus for most of us, is the health effects. And so where do you place your monitors to make sure that you're getting the most effectiveness there? So using the assessment as a tool. And this can be a nice, well-documented piece of information that you can hand to anybody. It can be the public, can be your managers, can be the boards. And once you do that, it's got everybody's approval and collaboration in it. And so use it or make it useful when you're preparing it rather than just getting by. And you can use it, yeah, for adding sites, removing sites, and Sacramento did this too. They took a section of it out, wrote a letter, and sent it into EPA, and it went right through. And because it was so extensive and thorough. It does serve as a long-term guide for your monitoring program. It's something that you can work toward, and it doesn't mean just because you update it every 5 years. Our thought is if we create some nice tools with this, we could run those even annually and see where things are progressing in intervals less than 5 years. So that's kind of the hope. And then, of course, it supports the annual network plan, so that it gives you some guidance of where that might be going from year to year. So we've got a timeline here. It goes for 1 month. I don't know what I did there. Copy and paste, I guess. So this summer, we're going to go through the previous assessments in further detail, start defining some goals of what we think we'd like to try and accomplish, and then we'll reach out to all the PQA districts, the CARB PQA districts. So everybody that was in our assessment the last time will be in it this time. We may do a survey like we did before, asking if you still want to be in it. I mean, you're free to go and work on it on your own if that's something you'd like. Most people don't really have the time, so if somebody else is willing to do the work, why not? That means we got to do a good job, of course, because we want to represent you well. This fall and winter, we'll prepare some outlines, start developing those tools once we've come up with a list of what we want to do, and then we're going to meet, obviously, internally and with our monitoring staff and try and make sure we're all coordinated in this effort. And then next spring, if we have any changes that we're thinking might be, I don't want to say recommended, but might be suggested, we'll go ahead and talk with everybody in advance, because we don't want there to be any surprises. And we did this with Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo last time, where we had some ideas about places where we might be able to make changes, and we wanted to make sure that it was clear that this is just what our statistics showed and what we thought we might want to try and work toward. And after a few years, we have begun working through some of those, maybe driven by other reasons, but it's still prepared a platform for those changes. And then July 1st of next year, you need to have the assessment submitted. So, yeah, I did those all out of order. I don't know if that distressed anybody, so I put them back in order here. So it doesn't really match the clock, the way the talk went. But so it's us and all the local districts preparing the assessments. We're evaluating the adequacy of the networks. You got to have it in by July 1 of next year, where you're going to break it down by each PQAO or district as desired. Why are we doing all this? Of course, the federal CFR is requiring it. But as I said, if we want to make something out of it and make it a lot more useful, then that'll provide a reason. We really should be assessing our networks anyway, so why not use this as the opportunity to make that happen? And then how you want to do it, again, is up to you, or me. And so here's my contact information, so you can tell me what you want to see in this document. I'd consider putting somebody else's information up here, but it's okay. I don't mind being contacted about it. So I don't know if you have any questions. Hopefully, this is just going to open your eyes to it. We will be talking with you over the next year, and I'd like to be involved. So thank you. You're going to let me free. All right. Good. You're not scared. All right. Oh, sure.
So has EPA ever come back on the 5-year assessment and made recommendations for the next 5-year or the 5-year after that, or is this strictly?
No, it's really prepare and submit. And EPA says, thank you very much, and check the box. I mean, I imagine they read through it, of course, and if they saw something that, I mean, this is great reading material. I put a lot of effort into all those detailed analyses. Look at this great reading. Especially want to learn about the wind flow patterns and stuff in the state. Yeah, it's great. But no, we didn't actually get any comments on it. I hope that means that we did a good job, right? And that it was thorough. But like I said, there aren't really requirements that they're trying to check off in it. There isn't something you really have to do. They want to see that you're making an effort, going through some analysis, systematically looking at all these issues that they want you to, the few issues that they want you to cover, and that met the goal. So that's why there's not really a lot of pressure on you, I don't think. I mean, the CFR doesn't tell you what you have to do. Sometimes that's easier, right? Here's the list I have to do, meet it, and you're done. So this is a little challenging, but.
I know we're all grappling with how to best utilize our resources. So
Yeah.
I see this as a good tool to do that, both for the districts and CARB.
Yeah, we've been in a lot of conversations, and that's the way I saw us using this as well. I said, we're already going through this effort to produce this document. Why not do it in a way that can help guide our desires or constraints in the case of resources? So, any others?